Amara stood in the middle of the market, her heart heavy with the weight of the world. Her clothes were ragged and her face, though young, held a look of someone who had seen far too much sorrow for her age. The air was thick with the scent of spices and fresh produce, mixed with the sounds of haggling and shouting. Merchants called out to passing customers trying to sell their goods while others bargained fiercely over prices. But in the midst of it all, Amara felt like she was invisible. She had no one to call her own, no family to protect her. Her story wasn't a simple one. A few years ago, she had a family. Her parents loved her dearly and they lived in a small cottage on the outskirts of the village. But that was before the accident. It came without warning, as these things often do. A terrible storm had come through one night. Violent winds tearing through the land, uprooting trees and breaking buildings. Amara's parents had tried to keep her safe, huddling together in their tiny home hoping the storm would pass. But it didn't. A tree fell on their roof and in the middle of the night it collapsed, killing both her parents instantly. Amara had woken up in the wreckage, confused and frightened. She had called out for her mother, but there was no answer. Her father, too, was gone. She could only remember the sound of the storm and the overwhelming darkness that followed. It was a nightmare, one that would haunt her for years. The neighbors found her in the morning, half buried in rubble, and took her to the village. But there was no one left to care for her. No grandparents, no uncles or aunts. Everyone who could have taken her in had already moved far away, leaving her with no choice but to fend for herself. She had wandered from one relative to another, staying briefly with strangers who barely knew her, always feeling like an outsider. No one truly wanted her. She wasn't their child. And eventually, she had ended up in the market. The man who had found her there was a stranger and not a kind one. He had heard her story, and though he didn't care much for her past, he saw a way to make money from her. He wasn't selling her in the way one would sell a horse or a cow. No, he was offering her as a worker, someone who could do labor in exchange for a roof over her head. It wasn't much, but it was something, and for Amara that was all she had left. As she stood there, feeling the weight of being a mere commodity, she watched the bustle of the market go on around her. She could hear the laughter of children playing near the fountain, the cries of a vendor selling fruit, the haggling voices of people trying to get the best deal. It all seemed so far away, like a dream. She was a part of this world, but she didn't belong. Not here, not anywhere. A man, well-dressed and looking wealthy, approached her. His eyes skimmed over her form, assessing her as if she were a piece of land or a new tool to add to his collection. She didn't mind. It wasn't the first time. The merchant stopped in front of her and asked the seller, the man who had taken her in, about her. He looked her up and down, and for a moment Amara felt a spark of hope. Maybe this man would treat her kindly. Maybe he would give her a real chance. But that hope quickly faded when she heard the price. "She's a good worker," the seller said, nodding his head. "I've had her do chores and clean the house for a while now. She's strong, can do hard work." The merchant nodded, glancing at Amara again, this time with a look that felt colder than before. "And how much?" 10 silver coins, the seller replied, counting the coins in his hand as though they were nothing but dust. "She's young. She'll be good for a few years of work. Not much else to offer." Amara's heart sank. 10 silver coins. That was all she was worth. No one had ever cared for her the way a mother should. She had no family, no place she could call home, and now she had a price on her head, a number that determined her value. The merchant seemed satisfied with the price, and Amara felt a pang of dread in her chest. She wasn't surprised by the outcome. After all, who would want a poor orphan like her? She had nothing to offer but her hands, her labor. She was nothing more than a tool, useful for a time and then discarded when she outlived her usefulness. Just as the merchant reached for the coins, a voice rang out from the crowd. It was a loud, urgent cry that cut through the noise of the market, stopping everyone in their tracks. "She's my daughter." The voice was filled with a rawness, a desperate energy that made everyone stop and turn their heads. Amara froze, her body tensing as she looked toward the woman who had shouted. The crowd parted, and there, standing at the edge of the market, was a woman. She was older, with a worn but dignified appearance, her clothes simple but clean. Her face was pale, and her eyes held a storm of emotions, grief, hope, and disbelief all mixed together. But when Amara looked into her eyes, something deep inside her stirred. There was something about the woman's face, something that seemed familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. The woman stepped forward, her eyes fixed on Amara. "She's my daughter, Isabella. I've been searching for her for years." The merchant looked at the woman in confusion, as did the crowd. They had never seen this woman before, and her claim seemed impossible. Amara's heart raced. She was certain she had never seen this woman before, but the way she spoke, the way she looked at her, it felt like a piece of something long forgotten. The woman approached Amara slowly, her hands trembling as she reached out. "Isabella, my baby," she whispered, as if calling the name from the depths of her heart. "I've found you. I've never stopped looking for you." The crowd murmured, some confused, others intrigued. The merchant, clearly annoyed, scoffed at the woman's words. "What are you talking about? This girl is no more your daughter than I am." But the woman didn't listen. She knelt in front of Amara, her eyes filled with unspeakable pain and love. "Isabella, it's me, your mother. I never wanted to leave you. Please remember me." Amara's heart hammered in her chest as the woman's words hit her like a wave. She felt a strange pull, a connection she couldn't explain. Her head swam with emotions, memories too distant to grasp fully. She had no recollection of this woman, but the love in her voice, the agony and hope mixed together, made something stir inside of her. Could this woman really be her mother? Had she been lost to her for so long? Or was it just a trick, a cruel illusion? The woman continued, her voice breaking. "I'm Eleanor. You were taken from me many years ago. I've searched for you everywhere, and now I've found you. Please, Isabella, don't leave me again." Amara stood frozen, unable to speak, unsure of what to do. The world around her felt like it was spinning out of control. She had been abandoned, but now, in the midst of this chaos, was the possibility that she wasn't alone. That perhaps, just perhaps, there was a place for her in this world after all. As the market's noise faded into the background, Amara looked into Eleanor's eyes, and for the first time in years, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The market fell silent as Eleanor knelt before Amara, her hands shaking as they hovered just above the girls. The crowd around them, once bustling with energy, now stood still, eyes fixed on the scene unfolding before them. Eleanor's words echoed in Amara's mind, and for a moment she could barely breathe. "Isabella, my baby." The name felt foreign, yet there was something about it that stirred a forgotten part of her heart. Could this woman really be her mother? Could she truly be the child Eleanor was searching for? Eleanor's face was streaked with tears, her eyes desperate, filled with a pain Amara had never seen before. The weight of her gaze was almost too much to bear, and Amara felt a strange tug in her chest, as if something deep inside her wanted to reach out, to say something. But the words wouldn't come. Amara stood frozen, torn between confusion and something else, something far more powerful than she could understand. She didn't know this woman. She had no memory of her. But the way Eleanor looked at her, with a love so raw and intense, made her wonder if perhaps she wasn't as alone as she had always believed. The merchant, who had been standing just a few steps away, watched the exchange with growing irritation. He cleared his throat loudly, trying to regain control of the situation. "What nonsense is this?" he scoffed. "This girl is no more your daughter than I am. She's mine, and you're wasting my time." Eleanor ignored him, her eyes still locked on Amara. She spoke again, her voice trembling but firm. "Please, Isabella. It's me, Eleanor, your mother. I never wanted to lose you. I've spent every day since you were taken, searching for you. I never stopped looking, never gave up hope. I knew deep in my heart that one day we would be together again." The words felt like a dream, a fairy tale, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to it. She had never known the love of a mother, never had the warmth of a family to protect her. Her entire life had been spent moving from one stranger's home to another, always searching for a place to belong. She had never known what it felt like to be truly loved. And now, here was this woman claiming to be her mother, with a heart full of emotion, a love so powerful that it almost seemed too much to believe. "Isabella, please," Eleanor continued, her voice breaking as she reached out toward the girl. "I'm not asking you to remember everything. I know the years have passed, but I never stopped loving you. I never stopped being your mother. Please, let me take you home." Amara's mind spun. The life she had known up until now seemed like a blur of empty faces and cold rooms. She had never truly felt like she belonged anywhere. But Eleanor's words, filled with such tenderness, made her wonder if she had a past that was waiting for her to remember. Was it possible? Was this woman really the mother she had lost so long ago? The crowd began to murmur, their whispers rising around them. Some were skeptical, questioning Eleanor's story, while others seemed moved by her heartfelt plea. The merchant, clearly annoyed by the disruption, waved his hand dismissively. "I've had enough of this," he said, turning to the crowd. "This girl is mine now, and I'm not letting her go." But Eleanor didn't flinch. She stood tall, her gaze never leaving Amara's face. "You can't have her," she said softly, her voice filled with quiet strength. "She's my daughter, and I won't let you take her from me." The merchant's face flushed with anger. "You'll regret this," he muttered under his breath, but Eleanor didn't back down. Instead, she turned her full attention to Amara, her voice softening. "Isabella, I know you don't remember me. I know this must be hard to understand. But please trust me. You're not alone anymore. I'm here and I will never leave you again." Amara's heart fluttered in her chest. She had never known what it was like to have someone fight for her, to have someone want her so badly. The realization hit her like a wave. This woman, Eleanor, wanted her. She was offering something Amara had never had: love, safety, a family. But the fear of the unknown held her back. She didn't know what to believe. Was it possible that Eleanor was really her mother? Could she truly go from being an orphan to being part of a family? A part of her wanted to believe, wanted to trust that there was more to her story than the years of loneliness and hardship she had known. But another part of her, one that had been hardened by the cruel reality of life, was afraid. What if this was just another lie? What if Eleanor would disappear like everyone else had? Eleanor seemed to sense her hesitation. She knelt down, lowering herself to Amara's level, her eyes full of understanding. "I know you're scared," she said gently. "You've been through so much, but I promise you I will never hurt you. You're safe with me. You don't have to be alone anymore." For a long moment, Amara stood still, caught between doubt and hope, fear and longing. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. The weight of the decision before her was almost too much to bear. She wanted to believe so badly that she could have a family again, that she could be loved and cared for. But the fear of being hurt again was overwhelming. Eleanor reached out once more, her hands trembling slightly. "Isabella, please," she whispered, her voice filled with an almost unbearable tenderness. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I swear to you, I will love you like no one ever has." Amara's heart beat faster as she looked into Eleanor's eyes, and something inside her shifted. There was a spark, a flicker of recognition, a feeling she couldn't explain. It was as if, deep down, she had always known this moment would come. Slowly, tentatively, she took a step toward Eleanor. The crowd fell silent as Amara reached out and placed her hand in Eleanor's. The warmth of Eleanor's hand sent a shock of comfort through Amara's body, and for the first time in years she felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. Eleanor's love was real. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a trick. And it was for her. Tears welled up in Amara's eyes as she looked at the woman who had called her daughter, who had never given up on her. She didn't have all the answers, but for the first time she felt like maybe, just maybe, she could find a place to belong. The journey ahead would be long and there would be many questions to answer. But for now, she knew one thing. She wasn't alone anymore. The crowd watched in silence, their whispers fading into the background as the bond between mother and daughter was forged once again. The air around Amara and Eleanor felt thick, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Amara stood in front of Eleanor, still trying to make sense of everything that had just happened. The crowded market with its haggling and shouting seemed distant now, a mere blur of noise that had faded into the background. All that mattered in that moment was the woman standing before her, the woman who had claimed to be her mother, the woman whose eyes held a mixture of love, sorrow, and relief. Eleanor's hands, still trembling, were wrapped gently around Amara's. She held her as though she were fragile, like a delicate piece of glass that could shatter with the slightest wrong move. There was no rush in her movements, no desperation. There was only the quiet certainty that, after so many years of searching, she had finally found the child she thought she had lost forever. For Amara, the reality of the moment was hard to grasp. Her whole life had been a series of struggles, one after another, with no one to call family, no one to protect her. But now, in this strange, unexpected moment, Eleanor was offering her something she had never dared to hope for: a home, a mother, a second chance. The words felt foreign, like a dream she might wake up from any moment. Eleanor gently wiped a tear from Amara's cheek. "You're safe now, Isabella. she whispered, her voice barely audible, as if speaking too loudly might shatter the fragile connection they had just formed. I'm not going anywhere. You're with me now. Amara closed her eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. She had lived with so much pain for so long that the idea of letting it all go, of trusting someone again, felt terrifying. She had never known unconditional love. She had never been wanted. How could she possibly believe that this woman, this stranger who claimed to be her mother, really wanted her? What if it was all a lie? What if this moment of tenderness was just a fleeting illusion? But as she opened her eyes again and looked into Eleanor's, the doubts slowly began to fade. There was no doubt in Eleanor's eyes, only a deep, unshakable love, a love that had survived years of separation, years of pain and searching. It wasn't a lie. It was real. Eleanor's love for her was real. Amara's heart, once hardened by years of loneliness, began to soften. She could feel the weight of the years lifting off her shoulders, as though Eleanor's presence alone could erase the scars of her past. Slowly, a tear slid down her own cheek, and she wiped it away with the back of her hand, feeling both vulnerable and relieved. For a long time, neither of them spoke. It was as if words were unnecessary, as if the silence between them said everything that needed to be said. The crowd that had gathered around them slowly began to disperse, some still whispering among themselves, unsure of what to make of the situation. The merchant, defeated and silent, had no choice but to walk away. He had lost the girl, and with that loss, his claim over her vanished. As the last of the spectators walked off, Amara finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost hesitant. I don't remember you, she said, her words laced with confusion. I don't remember anything before all of this. How do you know I'm your daughter? Eleanor smiled gently, her eyes filled with understanding. I know, she said, her voice tender. I know you don't remember. It's okay. I never stopped searching for you, though. Even when I had no idea where you were, I believed with all my heart that one day we'd be reunited. I never gave up hope. But I don't remember you, Amara repeated, her voice cracking slightly. I don't even know what my life was like before everything changed. Eleanor's face softened, her hand gently resting on Amara's shoulder. I know, sweetheart. I know it's hard to remember. But I'll tell you everything. I'll tell you about your childhood, about your father, about the life we had before the accident. And when you're ready, you'll remember. I promise. Amara nodded slowly, though a part of her still felt unsure. How could she remember something she had never known? How could she believe in a past that seemed so distant, so foreign? And yet, the more she looked at Eleanor, the more the pieces seemed to fit together. There was something in the way Eleanor looked at her, something in the way her voice trembled with emotion. It was as if Amara had always been there in her heart, even if she couldn't remember it herself. Eleanor took a deep breath and continued. You were just a little girl when I lost you. We lived in a small cottage by the edge of the forest. You used to love playing outside, chasing butterflies and climbing the trees. Your laughter filled the house. And your father, he loved you so much. We were a family, a happy family. And then, the storm came. I never imagined I would lose you that night. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, Amara could almost see the life Eleanor was describing. A life of laughter, of love, of a family she had never known. She could imagine herself as that little girl, running through the fields with her mother's voice calling after her, the warmth of her father's embrace. But those memories were lost, buried under the weight of years spent in loneliness. Amara couldn't remember the love, couldn't remember the joy. All she had were the scars of the past, the darkness that had surrounded her for as long as she could remember. Eleanor squeezed her shoulder gently, pulling Amara out of her thoughts. It's okay if you don't remember, sweetie, she said softly. I'll be here, and little by little, we'll rebuild the life we lost. Together. Amara looked at Eleanor, her heart swelling with emotions she didn't know how to express. She had spent so long waiting for something like this, and now here it was. Eleanor was offering her not just a second chance, but a life she had never dreamed was possible. A life with love, with belonging, with a family. For the first time in so long, Amara felt the smallest spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone anymore. And maybe, just maybe, she could begin to heal. Okay, Amara whispered, her voice barely audible. I'll try. Eleanor's face lit up with a smile that held years of pain, but also years of hope. That's all I ask, she said softly. We'll take it one step at a time, sweetheart. One step at a time. Amara felt the warmth of Eleanor's embrace as the woman wrapped her arms around her, holding her close. For the first time in her life, Amara didn't feel like she was floating in an endless sea of loneliness. She felt anchored, grounded. She felt like she belonged. As they stood there in the middle of the market, the world seemed to fade away. For the first time in years, Amara didn't feel invisible. She felt seen. She felt loved. And in that moment, it was enough. As Eleanor and Amara stood together in the middle of the market, the sounds of the crowd gradually faded into the distance. The bustling world around them seemed to slow down, as if it recognized the significance of the moment. People who had once been strangers, who had merely observed their interaction with curiosity or skepticism, now moved on. It felt like a quiet corner of the world where only the two of them existed. But even in the stillness, Amara could feel the weight of what had just happened. Her mind swirled with thoughts and emotions she wasn't quite ready to face. Eleanor, the woman who had claimed to be her mother, had returned after years of searching for her. A part of her felt a deep connection to this woman, but another part of her was uncertain. Could someone really love her after so long? Could Eleanor truly be her mother? Or had this all been some sort of strange coincidence? Amara glanced up at Eleanor, whose face was full of warmth and love. It was hard to believe that someone could care for her the way Eleanor did. But the sincerity in her eyes made Amara want to trust her. And maybe, just maybe, she could. Are you okay? Eleanor asked gently, breaking the silence that had settled between them. Amara nodded, though her thoughts were still racing. I think so, she replied, her voice quiet. It's just a lot to take in. Eleanor smiled softly, her eyes understanding. I know, sweetheart. I know this must be overwhelming. But we have time. You don't have to remember everything all at once. Amara looked down at her hands, which were still resting in Eleanor's. For the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel completely alone. There was a sense of safety in Eleanor's presence, something that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she could rebuild her life. But there was still so much she didn't know, so much she needed to understand about the life she had lost. I don't even know where to start, Amara admitted, her voice laced with uncertainty. I don't remember anything from before the accident. Before everything changed. Eleanor's expression softened with compassion. It's okay. You don't have to remember everything right now. But I can tell you about the life we had, the life we're going to rebuild together. It might not be the same, but we'll make new memories, one day at a time. Amara swallowed hard, trying to push down the lump in her throat. The idea of rebuilding her life, of starting over, seemed both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. She had always felt like an outsider, like she didn't belong anywhere. But now with Eleanor by her side, there was a chance, maybe even a real chance, that she could find a place for herself. I never thought this day would come, Eleanor continued, her voice filled with emotion. I never stopped searching for you, even when I had no idea where you were. I just kept hoping, praying that one day we'd find each other again. And now here we are. Amara looked up at Eleanor, her eyes searching the woman's face. How did you find me? She asked, her curiosity piqued. How did you know I was here in this market of all places? Eleanor's gaze grew distant for a moment, as if lost in the memory of all those years of searching. It wasn't easy, she said softly. After the storm, I thought I had lost everything. I had to leave our home, and I searched every day. I looked for you in every town, every village. I even went to the cities asking, showing your picture, but no one knew where you were. There were days when I thought I'd never find you. But I never gave up. Amara's heart ached as she listened to Eleanor's words. The depth of her mother's love was clear, and yet Amara still couldn't fully grasp the idea of being loved so unconditionally. She had never experienced that kind of devotion, not from anyone. Her life had always been about survival, about getting by day to day. And now here was this woman who was offering her everything, a chance at love, a chance at a family. But how did you know I was here today? Amara pressed, her voice barely above a whisper. Why today? Why now? Eleanor's eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled softly. I didn't know for sure. But something told me that today was the day. I can't explain it. I just knew. And when I saw you, when I looked into your eyes, I knew it was you. I felt it deep in my heart. You've always been mine, Isabella. Amara felt a warmth spread through her chest at the sound of her old name, the name she had almost forgotten. It felt like a key turning in a lock. a piece of herself slipping back into place. She wasn't sure if she could ever remember the life she had before, but hearing that name, the one that had belonged to the little girl Eleanor once held in her arms, made her feel like she was more than just a girl lost in the world. "Do you remember me?" Eleanor asked, her voice gentle but filled with hope. Amara hesitated. It was hard to admit, but the truth was she didn't. She didn't remember the woman who stood before her claiming to be her mother. She didn't remember the home, the laughter, the days spent with her family. But there was something in the way Eleanor looked at her, something in the way she spoke that made Amara want to believe. She wanted to trust. She wanted to believe that she wasn't just a stranger in a strange world anymore. "I don't remember," Amara said quietly, looking down at their joined hands. "But I want to." Eleanor's eyes softened with understanding, and she pulled Amara closer, wrapping her arms around her in a warm embrace. "That's all I can ask for, sweetheart," she whispered. "We'll take it slow. There's no rush. We have time, and I promise you I'll never leave you again." For the first time in years, Amara felt something other than loneliness. It was a strange, unfamiliar feeling, one that made her heart race and her mind dizzy, but it was a good feeling. A feeling that filled the emptiness inside her that had existed for so long. She wasn't sure what the future would hold, but for the first time, she felt like she had a chance. "I don't know how to trust again," Amara admitted softly, her voice barely audible. Eleanor pulled back slightly to look her in the eyes, her hand still gently holding Amara's. "Trust comes with time, sweetheart. It's something you build day by day, and I'll be here every step of the way, showing you that you're safe with me. You don't have to do it all at once," Amara nodded, feeling a tear slip down her cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or fear, but one of something else, something she couldn't quite name. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was the beginning of something new, something she had never thought possible. Whatever it was, it felt like a spark of light in the darkness. Eleanor smiled softly, brushing away the tear with her thumb. "We'll figure it out together." For the first time in a long time, Amara believed her. They would figure it out, and maybe, just maybe, she would find the place where she truly belonged. Days passed, and the quiet bond between Amara and Eleanor deepened. The market where they had first met felt like a distant memory now. Amara had always thought the world outside the market would be just as harsh, just as lonely as the one she'd known for so long. But Eleanor had shown her something different. The world outside was still full of challenges, but it was also full of warmth, of care, and of hope. The first few days after their reunion were spent quietly. They stayed in a small cottage on the outskirts of the town, a place Eleanor had found shortly after the accident. It wasn't large, but it was warm and comfortable, filled with the smell of fresh bread baking and the sound of the wind rustling through the trees outside. It was a far cry from the cold, unfamiliar places Amara had been forced to stay in for so many years. Eleanor had a way of making everything feel safe, even though Amara knew that the life they were now starting wasn't going to be easy. There was still so much they had to figure out. Amara had no memory of the life they once had. She had no memory of the family they had been. She didn't even remember the house that Eleanor described, with its warm fire and laughter. The only life she knew was one of survival, one that had been marked by isolation and loneliness. At first, Amara felt like an outsider in the home she was supposed to belong to. It was a strange feeling, to be in a place that was hers by birth but not by memory. Everything felt new and unfamiliar. The kitchen, where Eleanor made dinner every night, the small living room with its mismatched furniture, and even the garden where flowers grew in abundance. It all seemed like something out of a dream. But slowly, with Eleanor's patient guidance, Amara began to find her place. They would spend their days working around the house, cleaning, cooking, and tending to the garden. Eleanor would tell stories of the old days, stories about Amara's childhood, about the games she used to play and the laughter they shared as a family. Amara listened closely, trying to picture the little girl Eleanor described, but the memories were elusive, slipping away every time she reached for them. Still, there were moments, small moments when Amara would catch herself smiling, when the warmth of Eleanor's presence filled her heart in a way that felt familiar. It was as if, even without the memories, something deep inside her recognized the love Eleanor had for her. And that love, that quiet, steady love, was enough to begin to heal the broken pieces of her heart. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, Eleanor asked, "Do you remember the songs I used to sing to you?" Amara shook her head. No, I wish I could. Eleanor's expression softened and she began to hum a soft melody, one that Amara felt tug at her heart, even though she couldn't place it. The tune was old, simple, but beautiful. It reminded her of something, maybe the way it felt to be loved, to be cared for, to belong. Amara closed her eyes, letting the melody wash over her. It was as if the song was calling her back to a time she couldn't quite remember. But the feelings, the warmth, they were there, deep inside her. Sing it with me, Eleanor said gently, her voice filled with hope. Amara opened her eyes and looked at Eleanor, seeing the love shining in her eyes. She hesitated, but something inside her stirred. She took a deep breath, and for the first time she tried. She sang the first few lines softly, her voice shaky at first but growing steadier with each word. Eleanor joined in, and together they sang the song that had once filled their home with joy. As they finished, Amara felt something shift inside her. It wasn't a memory, not exactly, but it was as if the song had unlocked a door in her heart. For the first time since she had met Eleanor, she felt like she was truly home. It wasn't about the memories she had lost or the life she had forgotten. It was about the present, about the love that was being offered to her now, about the woman who was sitting beside her, singing songs of the past. Thank you, Amara whispered, her voice full of emotion. For everything. Eleanor smiled, her eyes glistening with tears. You don't have to thank me, sweetheart. You've always been mine. I'm just glad I can hold you again. In the weeks that followed, Amara's life began to change in ways she never thought possible. She started helping Eleanor more around the house, becoming more involved in the little routines they shared. She learned how to cook, how to care for the plants in the garden, and even how to fix things around the house. Eleanor taught her everything, showing her the love and care that had been absent from her life for so long. And with each passing day, Amara's doubts started to fade. She didn't need to remember everything from the past to know that this was where she belonged. The family she had lost, the life that had once been hers, wasn't something she could ever fully get back. But the love she had now, the love that had never truly left her, was enough to start anew. There were still days when Amara struggled with the weight of her past. There were moments when the loneliness crept back in, when she couldn't help but wonder what life would have been like if things had turned out differently. But Eleanor was there, always there, to remind her that she didn't have to carry that burden alone anymore. One afternoon, as they worked together in the garden, Eleanor looked at Amara with a thoughtful expression. You know, we don't have to stay here forever if you don't want to. We can go anywhere you like. We can start fresh, make a new life for ourselves. Amara smiled softly, shaking her head. I don't need to go anywhere. I'm home now. Eleanor smiled back, her heart full. They didn't need to go anywhere else because they had each other. They were finally together again, and that was all that mattered. As the sun set behind the hills, casting a warm golden glow over the garden, Amara realized that the family she had once thought lost was now hers again. It wasn't the same and it wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. For the first time in years, Amara felt the weight of her past lifting off her shoulders. She wasn't an orphan anymore. She wasn't alone. She was a daughter, loved and cherished, and she finally had a place to call home.